Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, wherever this happens to find you. My name's Tim Fairhurst from ETOA, and I'm very happy to be joined by Corinne Menegot from Paris Je t'aime. I know lots of people will be joining this afternoon, so Corinne will have a chance to say hello in a moment, but we'll just wait a minute or so for colleagues to join. But thank you for joining us for this briefing on Paris City Access. Corinne, before we dive in, thank you so much for finding the time to join us. I know that essentially your summer has been straight through with the Olympics and the Paralympics, and your summer's actually going to happen in October when you finally get a break. So we're really, really appreciative that you found time to join us today. And I know that you're very interested in helping the travel trade understand what's happening in the city. There are big plans which aren't tourism plans, they're city plans which affect tourism. And you've been very helpful guiding us through some of the background to those and making sure that we've got accurate information on our website. And towards the end of this session, time permitting, I'll just show our members where that information will be. But over to you. Any reflections you have on the summer, please do share, because it was a wonderful party and you very kindly invited us to share it. So it's not just about the coach access, it is also about working with Paris and reflections on the summer gone by. So Corinne, welcome, over to you.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you, because I think it's a moment which is important also for all of us. So happy to be able to share what we know about those changes and circulation access and regulations and everything. And of course, I will be happy to answer any question, maybe an introduction before sharing the presentation that we've put together. Just a few words, because we know that we have, some big changes coming in with low emission zone, which is already in progress in the global metropole, and then the traffic limited zone in the center of Paris. All of it is not completely, I would say, 100% finalized. So we may not have all the answers for everything, but I will share everything that we know actually. We still have some meetings with the City Hall during the next few upcoming weeks. So I'm pretty sure that we will have some new information to share. And of course, Tim will be the relay to do it and share with you. But your questions are also important, because if we may have some opportunity of, driving some new information to the city and make things different or change or evaluate or whatever, this is always an opportunity. So we can try anything. So it's not completely fully, finished. So I'm pretty sure that we can move a little the rules if needed, even if it's a very hard, I would say, rule from the mayor, who really wants the zone and be sure that it will happen as she wants. So I will share my presentation. Is that okay with you? So I will try to do it. I'm pretty sure. Is it working? Yeah?
Yep, that looks fine, Corinne. Go ahead.
Okay, and so feel free, of course, to ask any question at the end of a presentation. Just maybe a few words, but very quickly, just one slide, just to congratulate us all together for this magnificent Olympics that we had, as you said, Tim. But nearly 11 million of visitors came to Paris, so it's a little more than the usual usual numbers at this period. You can see the major nationalities to be present during these games. But as expected, mostly national, approximately 85% of national attendance, half residents, half people from the region, and 15% of foreign people. And this is approximately the same numbers for the Paralympics, but we've got 4 million people coming in, so we're still waiting for the final numbers, so I will be able to share them next week. But we were expecting approximately 90% of national attendance for 10% of foreign people. But I think we can all say that the images of Paris were very, very, very attractive. And I'm pretty sure that it will help also attendance to come over to Paris and will create a new attractiveness showing probably the link between modernity and actuality and what we have in terms of history, monuments, and everything. I think the mixed was really good, and we had a good job on welcoming all the visitors. The experience was incredible. And so we're happy to be on this line and to have this legacy for the next few years. So we will be happy to share any numbers that you need about that and legacy and whatever. Coming to the circulation in Paris and coaching.
Actually, sorry, Corinne, just to interrupt, it may anticipate some questions. We will be able to share this presentation later because we do make a recording available to members. So you don't need to be racing around taking notes. We will be sharing this afterwards. Sorry to interrupt, Corinne. Please go ahead.
So coming back to our subject, to our hot topic of the circulation into Paris, you know that the city has a strategy of Paris Respire, is Paris breathing. They're really working about better quality of life inside the city. So that means less noise pollution, nice, more quality of air and low impact transportation. You know that we've been working hard on that. You see the global image of the Paris Respire campaign, which is visible in different areas in Paris, especially, for example, around schools and where children play and everything. So this is really, I would say, a strategy and a motto that the city is really developing. And so the traffic limited zone is really into this objective and this goal, and has the objective of serving the goal of having a better way of living into the city. So this is important to have a context probably where it stands. And so the project is really focused on certain numbers of neighborhoods. So I will show you the map just afterwards. Only 4 neighborhoods, the arrondissement from 1 to 4. And not others. And the idea is really to bring down the heavy traffic in this zone, but it's more allowing destination traffic versus the transit traffic. So the goal is really to forbid and limit the transit traffic. So that means the coaches, but not only the coaches, but the trucks, every vehicles that cross the zone to go from one side of Paris to the other. So this is really the goal after that. That has been a consultation, professionals have been involved. We have several meetings with everyone, federations, professionals, professionals of culture, of events and whatever, and everything. Everyone was really involved in that. And that has been lasting probably for a year approximately. And so we are now at the end of the process. We've got several meetings of presentation during September from the city. That's why I was saying that some information will be probably finalized in the upcoming weeks. But the idea is really to make it happen during before the end of the year, probably mid-October. So giving that, regarding the coaches, the numbers of the coaches in 2022, just to give you probably some elements of context into Paris, it's more than 600 coaches per day into Paris in 2022, so in the high season. So of course it participates to the carbon effect and the traffic and everything, but not only, of course. So that's not, this zone is not regarding only the coaches, but it's really regarding all type of vehicles, like trucks, as I was saying, but also individual cars and everything. So this is really global. So we're going to talk about coaches because, of course, this is your heart of interest, but it's not only for coaches. And of course, we also know, and I think this is important also to remind that, but we know and we're absolutely convinced that coaches are important, especially for the school groups, senior groups, typology of certain type of visitors. So you, as Tim was saying, really we're working hard also to make it happen for you guys and be sure that we can answer all your questions and be sure that we can go along the way to help you also dealing with these new rules, because it will happen anyway. So this is also important that you can find some resources and effective resources in our teams. Oh, sorry. There was time, and Elodie told me there was still a yellow thing, and I thought I was so I had suppressed it. So sorry about that. But the project itself is a city center that will remain open to destination traffic, as I was saying, for small vehicles. So that means private cars, taxi, VTC, and minibus. And it was in yellow because we were waiting for the exact number of passengers. We have a numbers of 15 passengers, but we want to be double checked. This number has to be double checked about that. But approximately it will be between 12 and 15 passengers, and we're going to double check that and come back to you on that. And so as long as it is a destination, like deposit of people, like pickup, like visit of something, or school bus, things like that, that will be possible for all these smaller cars and smaller vehicles to be circulating in the zone. But the idea is just to go inside, do what you have to do, park inside if needed, and then exit, but not crossing the different things. Considering the perimeter of the zone, you see the map here, which is absolutely detailed. So it's only the 4 central arrondissements, as I was saying before. So it's not it's excluding the islands and excluding the left bank. So it's only on the right bank, 1, 2, 3, 4 that you know. So it includes the Louvre till La Concorde, La Rue de Rivoli, which is already the case, and a certain numbers of streets that you go, and that goes to the Grand Boulevard just behind. The project at the beginning was including the island and the left bank. So this is not the case. This has been reduced to these 4 arrondissements on the right bank only. So considering coaches, because this is really the heart of the presentation that we have, no coaches will be allowed into the zone anytime. So this is really a strict interdiction, I would say, with 2 exceptions. The disabled people, so people who needs coaches to be there because they have disabilities, and school coaches. So the school coaches will be authorized in the perimeter. So they will be able to go and make the drop-off or the pickup of the school pupils to be there. So this will be allowed. The idea is really around the zone to keep some parking lots like the Carousel du Louvre or Le Cours La Reine, which is not very far around the Concorde Square, and to be sure that the coaches can be parked there to drop off the customers. And so the idea is really to be able to, for this bus parking, to be able to refurbish them and be sure that they can have some direct access to the different places. For example, you have a photo of the Louvre here, but the parking of the Louvre will be redecorated. So people who will be able to be dropped off in the parking lot and then go by foot to the museum with no problem, because it will be refurbished and redecorated and everything, and signage and everything. So this is really the idea. The only buses that will be authorized in the zone are the public buses, because the lines of the public transportation will still be able to penetrate the zone, and the electric coaches up to 15 passengers, as we were saying just before. So the smaller ones. So that implies that, of course, the biggest coaches, the biggest buses that you have will have to split into different smaller ones if you want to go in the zone to make the drop-off of your customers. And I don't think, honestly, that will change actually. So this is really the decision that has been made. And I'm pretty sure that there won't be any other derogation. In terms of controls, well, you will have some specific signage. So it's not probably the exact signage which has been chosen, but anyway, it's mandatory signage. So we have to be enforced by the law thing. So I'm not sure we have a match choice, but this is the typology of signage that you will have at the entrance of a zone. And in terms of control and enforcement, you will have some random controls only at the exit of the perimeter. And the idea is really that the vehicles that can enter the zone have to provide a proof of their reservation, parking tickets, to show that they had a destination and a goal to go in the zone, and they were not only crossing the zone. This is the plan at the moment.
Sorry, Corinne, maybe, because I know one or two questions have already popped up.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the hotel reservation. So just for clarity, is it the case that a coach with a group with a hotel inside the zone can go inside or not? No. Which hotel do we need a reservation for here? Is it
for the smaller vehicles? So that means anyway.
Got it. Right. No, so this is for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And the electric minibus, so whether it's 12 or 15 passengers to be determined, but that vehicle and a private car will need proof of their right to be within that zone. Understood. Thank you.
Exactly. And maybe to give you a little perspective also, I know this is not easy, but I'm pretty sure that you know about all these zones everywhere, but we're not the only city to do that. So we're just following the path that all these European cities have already made, like Roma, like London, like Milano, Barcelona, etc. So I think it's anyway, it's in the path of the future. So that's probably quite the same thing. So I don't know exactly how you deal with that in the other cities, but probably this is something that, well, our teams were inspired by that to deploy the ZTL in Paris. But also they probably have some good practice that you already do in other cities that we can be inspired of, and we will be very happy with Elodie also to work with you on that. Also, be sure that we can do the right, take the right decisions, and be sure that we can give you the help that you need because you've done that before in other cities. So I think this is also important to get that in perspective and be aware of what's happening everywhere.
Thanks, Corinne. And I think just to echo that point, from our perspective and looking ahead to one of our events in the ETOA calendar, which will be in June next year, June 2nd and 3rd, which is our Destination Exchange Europe. One of the opportunities there is for us to showcase good practice in visitor flow management, but that includes everything from people who are doing a good job of distribution at attractions, people who've got smart ways of managing access in cities. And I know that some of the smaller cities, and I'm thinking, for example, of Bruges, have perhaps come up with a slightly more nuanced approach than the big cities have succeeded in doing. And they've allowed coaches with groups with luggage to go to hotels, but without luggage, no, you have to walk to the perimeter of the excluded area. So I think it's a very good invitation, and it's one we'll certainly take up to share thoughts on. Are there ways of maximizing mutual interest within the context of the city's overall targets? And perhaps, for instance, there's a couple of questions already thinking about overall targets and any evidence people might need to demonstrate that they fit the exemptions. And this may not be information you have, but if this is something that you can share or can say where we can find it, I think just noting that the overall reduction by removing coaches will be 5% or so from a traffic perspective, and perhaps 6% on pollution. And that's to do with overall, not per person, because coaches are relatively low per person for obvious reasons. Is there an overall reduction target by a certain date that the city is hoping to accomplish, or is this just directional and it's just continued reduction rather than a particular target? So that was, please.
There is an overall target, so I will give you the numbers because honestly I don't know everything by heart on that, but there is a plan which is pretty pretty much detailed, in fact, with the overall goal that we have till 2030. So in the next 6 years.
Okay.
And
Well,
then we have another one at 2050. So we can share that with you.
great. Well, we'll add that information to our site when we have it. Thank you. And just going back to the exemption for school groups, and I know this may well be something you touch on, but since you mentioned it a couple of slides ago, is the definition of school groups people who are under 18 years old, or is it, what proof would be needed should the coach be stopped to say this is a school group? What would the driver or the group organizer need to show?
I would say it's probably more the little ones, so probably under 12, but I will check that. And I'm pretty sure that it includes the international if needed. But if it's, for example, 15 to 18, it will include international for sure. But I'm not sure it includes that ones. So I'm going to check that. Okay. I'm not
I think
sure it's
from an
also detailed
international,
at that time.
sorry to talk over you, there was a slight lag with the sound for me. I think from an international group perspective, the older students, the lycéens in French terms, would be the highest volume, the 15 and up. So I think, again, if that's information we can share, we'll happily get that to our members as soon as practical. But that from a querying perspective for international groups, that's going to be important. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I'm sorry I don't have the answers, but honestly, I think some of the decisions were not so much detailed at the time. So it's in the process of being finalized for the end of September. And as there were the games, I think there was a lack of information for a few months. So we definitely will have some answers before the end of the month. So I will share that. But probably this is something where we can also make probably some changes. So I definitely note that. I fully agree with you. And I have defended the fact that it could be interesting for international student groups, of course. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Okay, on continue.
I'll continue. There was a question I think before, but the hop-off buses are considered as public transportation. So they can go into the perimeter, so they will have access, and so they can circulate into the perimeter.
And again, just to anticipate a follow-up question to that, so some hop-on, hop-off services sell all of their tickets, as it were, before the tour starts. So they'll go in and they won't be stopping and meeting clients in the street. Some do meet clients in the street and people pay for different segments of the trip. So from a private coach tour perspective, I suppose the question is, what's the difference between a closed door private tour that goes within zones 1 to 4 and a hop-on, hop-off service, which has sold all its tickets in advance? I mean, I'm just wondering whether,
but
essentially
it's individual. So tour bus and big bus or whatever up and off are individual customers taking some tickets, like they take the subway or they take a bike or whatever to visit the area. So this is not at all the same thing. So it's like a public transportation. And for example, tour bus is part of the RATP. So it's a real public transportation, like a bus. It's exactly the same thing as you take a public bus, but you have a comments and you can sit and whatever. So it's a little difference in terms of comfort and touristic view. But this is the perspective.
Yes, and I mean, you've mentioned the names of 2 ETOA members, and it's not for me to get involved in commercial discussion, but I suppose the lawyer in me would say, well, you could, a group operator could just book a hop-on, hop-off service for an entire group. Because that would be, so I think, I can see that, and I'm really not putting you on the spot. I'm just I think this illustrates how complicated this kind of activity is, and I'm sure that we'll figure it out. But I think it's likely that question will come up.
No, but that's why I was saying that we need some more details on some decisions that have been made, and which don't have the support details, that can be meaningful for that. So of course, and so we ask all these questions. So we're not at the we don't have this in our hands. So we just take the information and try to translate what we can and ask the right questions and be the intermediary between everyone. That was not easy in terms of consultation before, because we had a lot of questions. We tried to move some things, be sure that we can bend the rules a little, so still hoping for that, but of course I think it will be something that will come into once it will be operational, and then we will see how it goes. But I know this is not comfortable, so I'm sorry about that. And so the other way, but about it, it's the low emission zone, so much bigger, but about that because it's the global Greater Paris Axis. Just a few words about the next scheduled date of 1st of January 2025, where there is a change in terms of access, because you will have some more restrictions with the diesel engine coaches, and so different vignettes that we have. And then there will be a complete ban of diesel engine coaches and global vehicles, diesel engine vehicles, but we don't know yet when. So that has not been decided for the moment. So be just aware that 1st of January 2025, that will change for the Euro Standard 5. I'm not a specialist of the different things. And 3 and 4 that will be banned as well. So there are some additional restrictions from 1st of January 2025.
Yeah, and I think from the coach industry perspective, I know that availability. So if you want to buy Euro 6 coaches, there are not so many on the market at the moment. So there is a supply side problem for Euro 6 coaches, and there's an even greater supply side problem for electric coaches, partly because of the manufacturing capacity in Europe. So I think from our perspective, and this is a much broader question than the visitor economy, Europe's transition to more green mobility is contingent on the manufacturing base and a charging infrastructure and all sorts of things, which may not be at the state that destinations anticipate they will be by the time of these new requirements. So I think probably this will be an iterative process as we work with what's possible within the supply chain. But I think that's very clear from the 1st of January next year, Euro 6 only, and I think that's been flagged quite clearly, and we'll watch carefully as things evolve from then on. Thank you.
And I think that's it. Just to let you know that, of course, we will update our information in the center of resources that we have at Paris Je T'aime. So Elodie does an incredible job gathering all information, which is not always easy, but just to be sure that we have all regulations and the up-to-date information, especially on the parking, the pass autocar and everything. So you can, of course, have access to all of this information. And just a few information about the pass autocar, which is compulsory. You know that to park in Paris, but you already know that. So we gathered just some information about that, and we hope that the way of how we will proceed for this center zone in terms of regulations will probably help also to develop some new services at the Pass Autocar, and this is something we're struggling with and we're really fighting for, about reservation. Be sure that you have some places and available places in the different parking lots and things like that. So we're really in this process also just to pursue the effort on that to help you also just schedule your circulation and be sure that you have the parking lot that you need if you need to be at the peripheral of the zone.
Thank you. I think, if I may, I'll just tick through some questions which arise, and I'll keep an eye on the questions should audience members have any others. So some reflections from an ETOA perspective. If we look at the total number of parking slots in the Louvre parking and the Cours la Reine is 126. I suppose one question that arises, and this may be a matter, I don't know, obviously the Louvre is a national museum, Cours la Reine, I guess, is a city facility. Is there any discussion about how long the parking slots are, whether, there's going to be any thought on, the duration of the parking slots or the management of their availability? Because it strikes me that a little bit like tickets at very, very popular attractions, what this will do is drive behavior in the sense that as soon as slots open up, people will jump on the website with the credit card or whatever the means is to pay and get the slots. And, in a sense, that's the market and that's what happens. But from your perspective or to your understanding, will the way that the parking slots in both of those places evolve as a result of this? Because demand will go up. And I'm just wondering if there's any thought on how those parking slots will get distributed, or if that potentially is something also subject to consultation.
Yeah, that's what I was saying that putting in place this zone will probably have some impacts on different things. And I think we've got to work about how we can book the parking lots, how the duration, the prices and everything. So this is probably something that will be in a step 2, because it won't be happening now. So for now, it will be exactly the same function and same way, same process as it is actually. But probably it will be a step 2. And to my perspective, for the moment, at least, the parking du Louvre, for example, was never full, never. It was underused, absolutely, because I think about you've got around 80 slots, and there was less than 10 or 15 used every day, so in average. So I think we've got some, some space just to be aware and to be sure that it goes well for you just in terms of booking. And the other thing is that the city is really working actually on other parkings at different areas in Paris, because there is not only the center of Paris, but we've got some other place to visit. So the idea is also to develop some new parkings that's in the periphery of Paris, like, for example, Carrefour Pleyel in Saint-Denis. We built the Olympic Village in Saint-Denis, and the mayor of Saint-Denis has really the goal of using around the parkings around the Olympic Village as parking for coaches before entering Paris. So that will be probably a sort of logistic area where you can park the coach, make a transit for the people, so taking either the subway with the new line 14, or taking some smaller coaches, smaller buses that can go inside the center and into Paris. So I think this will probably change the way that we enter Paris and how we deliver, I would say, the service to our customers. But we've got to be a little imaginative and innovative for that. And that's why I was saying that let's also see how it happens in the other cities, and from your experience, and probably take some directions also from that, and be sure that we help build the right answers to your logistical needs afterwards. So parkings, how you book them, durations and everything. So this is really something we can work on.
Yeah, no, that's well understood. And a couple of questions have come up. So one going back to the exemptions, and I actually think this exemption was covered, because the acronym PMR in French is for Personne Mobilité Réduite, and someone is asking whether there is consideration for people who are disabled and have limited mobility. And I suppose, again, the question arises, and you and I have talked about this previously. We know that an increasing number of clients will be older, may find long walks difficult. So whether they're legally classified as, having a disability or not, I think it's imaginable that there will be mixed groups. So some people might fall above the threshold where they, as it were, are legally classified as such, whereas others just find it uncomfortable and difficult. So there's a gray area, and I imagine that, obviously from a human level, we want to look after people as best we can, and certainly from a tour operator duty of care perspective, we want to look after people as best we can. So I think how we prove eligibility, or what the criteria are for people who are disabled or have limited mobility, I think that's something to consider, partly because it would be difficult to single people out. But we've got a group of 30 and 3 of them are legally disabled. I can just see that being difficult at a human level, and also from a customer service and a logistic level. So if you have any thoughts on that, I know it's a complicated question, and if the answer...
and we've already told that, and we don't have the answer yet. So we don't know exactly how it will be operational, but I fully agree. Senior people, especially, are not legally disabled, but they will have to take some smaller coaches. So I think this is really the answer that we have to pursue.
Yeah.
We already spoke loud about that, but didn't change anything. So I would say we definitely have to find some new solution for that. And
absolutely.
And for the metro tickets, because I see the other one, it's well, the games have opened a new way of taking some new passes from a digital way. So now on your phone, you can book directly your pass and your tickets and everything. So it's not exactly in place for the moment. That was a test for the games and on a specific package of tickets. But it will probably be there mid 2025, I would say, or end of 2025. So this is definitely something that will be easier for that. So you will have directly on the tickets on your phone, especially. And just to let you know also that the tourism office, we sell some tickets like Navigo Easy with 10 tickets. So it's quite easy also to book them from our website and make them deliver at the hotel or at one place or at the departure of the coach or whatever. So this is quite easy just to deal with, actually, much more than before.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Improving, yet to improve, but improving.
Sure. Okay, one more question's popped up. So well, Christian Thiel has anticipated or asked the question I asked a bit earlier, but I think I'm not the only one who thinks that groups might book tickets on hop-on, hop-off services. And in fact, I mean, historically, that wouldn't be a new thing. It's quite often the case that groups might offer that to their clients who can operate a little bit more independently rather than everyone doing something together.
In other cities, your understanding?
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
It does, but it would happen in 2 ways. One would be, instead of everyone doing the same thing at the same time, they would have a voucher or a ticket for a particular service, and they could use it within a particular duration. And the group would meet up again later and all go together to dinner or something like that. So it would be as it were, free time within which there is an included activity, which is hop on, hop off. And depending on people's interest, they can obviously use it more or less, or stop off and see a museum, whereas others don't see a museum, and so on. So that is quite standard practice, and perhaps that will happen more. But I suppose that's where some of the challenge may come, if people are feeling that there's a sort of competitive piece to that, which is complicated. But again, we're not here to get into the legal analysis. I think we're just sort of anticipating some of the logistic and practical questions people are going to have. Just in terms of drop off and pick up. I remember when the city changed the arrangement, whereas previously you were able to park coaches immediately to the east of Notre Dame on the Ile de la Cité, and then that stopped, and you drop people off on the left bank, perhaps, and you walked, or perhaps in Châtelet. So what happens when a zone becomes restricted is, you get more activity on the just outside the perimeter of the restricted zone. So do you anticipate more facilities? And I'll come back to a comment about the Carrefour Saint-Denis. But do you think that there will be more facilities to drop off and pick up around the perimeter in order that people can, walk to, places within the restricted zone relatively easily?
Yeah, probably, but I think this is already the case. If you see the Grand Boulevard, you already have some coaches with drop-off zone.
Yeah.
Boulevard,
Okay.
but it's not a legally parking. So
Yeah.
it's much far away than the parking du Louvre, for example.
Yeah.
And on the other side, on the left bank, this is also the case on the quay, but this is not very easy just to deal with. So I'm not sure it will be very comfortable on the peripherals of a zone, in fact.
Yeah, and obviously there's a safety element. We need to make sure clients are getting off coaches in a safe place. But I think that's something we can probably pursue offline, and because some operators are very, very familiar with Paris and they'll figure this out. Others visit less often, and it's useful from a tour design perspective to understand where it'll be more or less practical. I can see there's a couple of questions about the metro, but I think your general offer to us to come up with suggestions. Thinking about the Carrefour Saint-Denis, and it's not a facility I've been to, but I think operators in general would say that if we have, I think what the jargon says, a multimodal interchange, so you're going from one form of transport to another, and it's something cities like Amsterdam are exploring, and often the ambition exceeds the budget to begin with, so you can see where it's going, but it's not quite there. If there's a facility which allows coaches to be cleaned, to allow the onboard toilets to be serviced, the drivers have got somewhere to have a coffee, that kind of thing, that's a huge plus. And it really helps us deliver a better service and look after people. So, and if it's raining, you can get out of the coach and get to the metro without getting wet, that kind of thing. So the quality of the interchange, does it feel safe when you get off the coach? Is it well lit? All those sorts of things. I think experience suggests that if we get those right, that works really well. If we get those wrong, it's problematic. And an historic example of where it can be problematic typically is, let's say, at train stations, where very comfortable high service in the train, and then it's quite hard to manage the quality of service as you go and collect the luggage somewhere. Where does the bus park, and so on. So intermodal connectivity, I think, for urban mobility generally, not just for the tourism industry, is something I think is increasingly of interest to city transport authorities, and I'm sure Ville de Paris is thinking about that as well. So on the ticketing, I know that's not quite a Ville de Paris thing. That's RATP and STIF. It's a region, but you can see the same questions I can. Do you have any thoughts on the metro cards for groups, or how we can manage metro tickets?
Metro cards for groups, in fact, it's individual cards with a number of tickets on that, so we can manage that, so we can do it for you, of course. And for the single-use metro tickets, we can also work on that. I think it's just a question of anticipation, but I think we can, from our side, we can order some specific ticketing with the number of tickets that you want, but it will have to be on a card. So that means you need to have logistics to get the cards somewhere. So, but it can be very easy at one point of rendezvous or whatever. So this is really something. On the other way, each individual could could be able actually from it's working actually to book a ticket, an individual ticket on his phone by creating an account, an EDFM group and things like that. So we can give you a process, and we've made some transportation key facts with how to use it, the user mode and everything. So we can, of course, share that with you.
Well, it sounds like we might need to do another one of these, not necessarily with you, but once we've got the information together to do a briefing, because there's lots of moving parts here, and Paris, of course, remains the biggest international overnight destination in Europe. So it's certainly a hot topic. A couple of other questions have appeared. So will the coach parking at Bercy, that's unchanged, I imagine. So that stays the same.
For me, it's still under discussion because it's a discussion between the state and the city, and they don't know what they do with it. So we're fighting for having still open for the coaches, but I'm not sure that the decision has been taken yet. So I will check it again because before the summer, that was not clear at all. And I don't have the clue for now, but I will check it again. But for me, they haven't decided yet.
Yeah, thank you. And taking a broader view, I think that this does illustrate that, local democracy is tough. This is hard. The consultation processes are very involved. And I think from an ETOA perspective, what's interesting about Paris is, they're very open about what's happening and all the various stakeholders that are involved. But nothing necessarily happens as fast as one wants, and that is a function of all the various institutional requirements and due diligence. And it is challenging for operators who are already selling programs for 2026, knowing exactly how it is that they're going to be moving about in the city. There's one question which I think was implicit in your previous answer. So someone asking why electric powered coaches are not being allowed in. And as I understand it, it's really because it falls within that, because you want to reduce overall traffic and overall numbers. And we can argue about, but that's going to mean there's going to be 6 or 8 cars and more minibuses. But that is the decision, and the decision's been made. I don't necessarily, there's clearly not a strong emissions argument for that. But there are other arguments for it which have carried the day as far as the authorities go.
Only for the center.
Yes,
it's not for the
exactly.
low emissions globally, only for the center. So it's only for arrondissements. So I know they are very touristic and everything, but it's only for them. Yeah.
Last question about street safety, and this has come up in more than one location. So Paris is by no means the city to single out for this, but it is a safeguarding responsibility of tour operators. So if we're moving from private coaches, which are a very controlled and safe environment, to public transport, so managing the safety of your clients, particularly if they're children or for whom mobility could be tricky, that just adds complexity. Is there any, I would imagine you've actually got quite a lot of data, and you won't have it in your head, but this last summer saw an increase in revenue from the metro tickets. There was a supplement applicable. Was there a big effort with regard to a sort of more visible presence of security personnel just to make people feel comfortable in public transport? And was there any help for people who can't use elevators, or even if that help is just to really make it clear that there's certain stations which do not yet have step-free access, just to make it clear how people for whom steps would be difficult can still use most metro stations because they have elevators and they have escalators. So safety and accessibility for metro.
Yeah, I think this is the goal anyway, and we demonstrated that it was possible during this summer. But again, that is a huge investment also to be put in place. But the goal in terms of accessibility is absolutely clear. to have transportation 100% accessible at one day, but it will take time because you know the metro that we have. We've got some patrimonial thing with stairs, and this is not so easy just to make it happen. But again, we've got some specific lines with the new lines, the 14, which is absolutely accessible 100%. All the buses are 100% accessible, and you can even take your ticket on the bus directly. So we've got quite a good offer on that, and probably one of the best offer anyway in terms of capitals in Europe. So in terms of suburban metros and subways and buses and everything. So I think we've already made some great efforts, but we still have a long way to go, of course. And for the security, I will check the numbers, but of course we did have a demonstration of people of police to be deployed this summer because of the Olympics. So no, it won't be like that every day. So no, but I think everyone is conscious of the thing, and everyone is working on that. And I think the metro and the region, but I won't speak for the region, but IDFM and the RATP, the new boss of the RATP, Jean Castex, ex-prime minister, is really committed to make it happen. So I think that will be part of his strategy for the next few years.
Understood.
And I agree for the 50 packs at one time, the seniors to the metro. So I know this is not absolutely exactly what we would like. But as Tim was saying, if you go to the Louvre anyway, you will have to find a way. Either you drop off the people at the parking du Louvre and you will still have to walk the long way to go to the Louvre. But it's about, well, 5 minutes walk, so it's not very far. And probably we can find some solutions with a wheelchair or whatever to help people to go there if needed. Either you take some smaller coaches.
Thank you. I'm just again reviewing the other questions we have. I think one which actually reminds me of a similar question in London, and it's to do with overall infrastructure capacity. Someone's done the work that several hundred coaches a day could be up to 28,000 extra passengers if they were all displaced from coaches to metro. I don't know what the daily volume is of the metro system. I guess 28,000 is a relatively small increase for the whole.
I think it's 5 million people each day or something like that. So
I think it's something. I think so. A bit like.
And again, 700 coaches. It's for global Paris, not only the center. So we're talking about the center where you cannot have access by coach, but all the other ways and places you can. So you can. So no, not an issue for that. So
I think the comparisons often drawn in big cities when a large football match might have 80,000-90,000 people moving around at certain times, and it very quickly disperses within the system. And in cities like London, that happens multiple times every weekend, and it works because the cities are big enough. But I think it's interesting to consider. Someone who's used line 14, I think that the new metro line there is very rapid into the city, and people who aren't familiar with it, it is worth looking at which metro lines might suit you the best, or indeed which RER lines might suit you the best, because some of the stations are much easier to manage groups in, and that will need a bit of additional research, but it's certainly something to consider. Another question from a colleague who I think has been misled by my mangled question earlier on. I think, Alessia, to clarify, there is no question of using coaches to access hotels within the zone. That's just not permitted. The only vehicles that can go in the zone are cars and minibuses, up to electric minibuses, up to 12 to 15 passengers. That number still to be determined. And those vehicles will need to prove that they have a good reason to be in. Either they've got a parking slot, or they had a parking slot, or they've got a reservation for a hotel. Coaches may not go inside that zone. end of story, from the date. And I guess the start date, you said mid-October is still your current working assumption. Do you know when we're going to get clarity on that? I know that's not within your control, but any guidance you can give us would be great.
Honestly, I don't know, so I will check that. Except if Elodie, who's here, has the information, so maybe she can give it to you. But I don't know, so I will check. But I think some of the documents have already been updated because we had the new fairs and everything that were on the presentation. But I will check. And again, what we could do probably that would help. I'm sorry, I haven't thought about that before, but maybe give you an update of how many hotels are really concerned by these zones. Because honestly, some smaller hotels are not very concerned. And honestly, I made the exercise, so it's not exactly the same zone, but we made exactly the same exercise for the red perimeter around the Olympic sites and everything. And honestly, finally, it was not so impactful for the hotels because there were less than 10 hotels concerned on this zone, specifically around the Seine and everything. So I will check that because I think it would be interesting for you guys to have the information. So which hotel are really concerned by that and what solutions we can find with them. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly true that some of the demographics in terms of more smaller group business and so forth, it will be interesting to see how things change. We saw that in Amsterdam, very different and changes for different reasons, but we will stay close in touch on that. There's one last question, Corinne, about when will the Paris Pass be
just a word, but this zone is not a big zone, so it's really I know it's not so easy to walk in for everyone, but we saw that during the Olympics. Honestly, everyone was walking, and everything is really at walking distance. So I do know that it's not the case for everyone, of course.
Yeah.
But again, for most of the groups that we have, it's quite easy finally because it's a small zone. So anyway, if you want to go to the Louvre from the parking to the Louvre, it's really close. So that's.
No, I think the point's well taken. I mean, from top to bottom, the zone is 1.5 kilometers, so sort of 20-25 minutes walk. Side to side, it's about 4 kilometers. So I agree that for most groups for whom walking is not a problem, it's not difficult. Other cities where quite a long walk has been necessary for some time. I'm thinking of cities like Florence, where you have to park upstream from the historic center. If you're in a coach and groups walk into the center, that's a longer walk than you'd have to do in Paris. So change is always hard to manage. And I think one of the reasons why this is challenging is this change is happening really soon. And it's hard to incorporate changes when you're in sort of midstream from a pricing and product development perspective. But we've got to the top of our hour, and perhaps unsurprisingly, we did not run out of questions on our website. And let's see if I can get that right. Now do you see something called destination access?
Exactly.
Great. Okay. So apologies for previous mess. Now this, if you look at our website, operating in Europe, the top menu, and then you go down to destination access, this is the page you get to, and it's only accessible if you log in. So I'm logged in. So today we made a little update because we've got some news about Rome coach access for next year. And then if you scroll down the page, you will see that we're talking about the briefing we're having now. There is a lot of information. We do have the official sources here. So as and when we get more information, this is where ETOA will share it with you. So please do share this with your teams who are involved in destination access anywhere. The team tries hard to keep this up to date, and we will intend to grow the number of countries, cities that we have destination access information for in coming months. So just as a general call to members, if you have particular cities of interest that we do not yet cover on this page, please do feel free to tell us. And we're here to provide useful information. Have a look, operating in Europe, various elements here. Some of them are just for members, and we're here to do stuff that's useful for you. So if there's information missing, there's other cities you'd like us to cover, please do get in touch with us. So thanks for that. I've taken another 2 or 3 minutes of your afternoon, Corinne, so I'm going to call things to a halt there. Thank you so much for your time as ever. Really much appreciated. I hope you have a very good holiday when you finally get to it in October. Thoroughly deserved. And for everyone who's joined us for the last hour or so, thank you very much for your company. I hope that was useful. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.